Housing Finance Bank, a financial institution regulated by Bank of Uganda. Housing Finance Bank, we make it easy.
Your views, our interviews on Spectrum, Radio 1 FM 90.
A very good evening to you, and thank you so much for joining us on this edition of Spectrum, coming to you live on Radio 1 FM 90. Radio 1 is also broadcasting on its website, which is www.radio1fm90.com. On that website, there is an icon with the word Listen Live. We're also live on the different radio listening apps. Tune in Afro Mobile, your TV channel, Radio Garden, and Stream Africa. But we're also live on DSTV. Our audio channel there is 897. Two ways to contribute to this discussion. One of the ways is actually to call in. Time allowing, I'll open the phone lines for you to do so. But you can share with us WhatsApp messages using the number 0703-090-090. Today we'll be looking at the performance of the parish development model. Now, the official government documents describe the parish development model as a strategy and program aimed at addressing poverty and promoting wealth creation at the household level. Now, the model positions the parish as the epicenter of multi-sectoral community development, planning, implementation, supervision, and accountability. Now, parish as the lowest reference unit for planning, budgeting, and delivery of interventions to drive socio-economic transformation is emphasized. This model, the parish development model, they say will create wealth, employment, and also increase household incomes. It's driven on 7 pillars: production, storage, processing, and marketing, infrastructure and economic services, financial inclusion, social services, mindset change. Now, this is the second financial year in running when the parish development model is being implemented, with an injection of 1 trillion shillings from which money is extended to organized groups, call them circles. There's been a debate on whether this model is working. Leaders in some places have reported what they call disorganization, corruption, lack of understanding on the entire model by the citizens who are supposed to benefit from it. So how has it performed so far? Is there room for improvement? What are the challenges being cited? What is your view as a listener? So join us in this discussion, share with us so that we can understand what exactly is going on when it comes to implementation of this model, the parish development model, which is being coordinated by the Ministry of Local Government. My guest this evening, Mr. Julius Kapwepwe, Technical Advisor at the Parish Model Secretariat. That's at the Ministry of Local Government. Good evening, and thank you very much for joining us, Mr. Kapwepwe.
Thank you. My pleasure to be here.
And now joining us on the line, the Honorable John Eresu, veteran politician who served as Kabaremaido County MP. Good evening, and thank you very much for joining us, Honorable John Eresu.
Thank you very much. Good evening, my fellow panelists, Kapwepwe.
All right, we expect a third guest when she gets here in studio. We'll introduce her. Very quickly, let's begin with you from the Secretariat, Mr. Kapwepwe. I think you've followed the arguments that have been going on about the parish development model, whether it's working or not. Give us a brief report. What do you see from the Secretariat where you coordinate the activities of this intervention?
Thank you very much, Kenneth, again. Our quick impression is, evidence-based impression, is that the parish development model, as envisaged by His Excellency President Yoweri Museveni, is actually delivering for Ugandans directly and indirectly. And I think as we go along deeper in the discussion, we shall double-check this evidence from different perspectives, callers, and all this. The evidence we have, for instance, is that since in the first place, why the parish development model? We are coming from the perspective that in spite of several government efforts for development towards socio-economic transformation, you have only gone, in the case of subsisting people or households, you have managed to bring that number down from 80% levels and to about 61. That you still have a number equivalent 39%. That is 3.5 million households of Ugandans that are still grappling under the yoke or under the fangs of subsistence economy. Meaning many of them cannot afford the meal. Many of them are not sure of the next meal. And many of them really do not have an income. You could make some money. You've pushed your wheelbarrow, thank you, but the money you've pushed a wheelbarrow for at 9 a.m. is later on at 10 a.m. what you have spent on for breakfast and finished. Later on, as you work in the course of the day, is what you have spent on for lunch. And you are not even sure of the next transport home. So rough, or you have a bit of, say, some 3 acres of land, but all you do is grow your matoke, is grow your simsim and cassava, and then for home consumption, if you're lucky, it is enough, but in some of the cases, it's not even enough. So that's all. You don't get money. You don't get an income. That's the struggle, the protracted struggle that His Excellency President Yoweri Museveni has narrated and gone through and supported Ugandans about. So in the case of the parish development model, increased household income is definitely part of the key things we wish to see. In some of the cases from zero income at all to some level of income. In some of the cases from very, very meager income, insufficient to certain levels of modest income. But also improving service delivery, and not just service delivery at, say, up there. I can give an example of, say, migration services, which seems to be up there. You want a passport or you want a driving permit unless you go to Fort Potro city, unless you go to Gulu town, unless you go to Mbale, and you are coming from deep in Ruakaka. You are not able to have a service. Can we see that being delivered at the parish? How would that be the case, for instance, when you talked about that second pillar of infrastructure and economic services, that you have internet outreach and continued investment and reduced cost of smartphones, for instance, for people to be able to have a service like migration once it is digitalized, to be able to have that from under the mango tree at home or from their sitting room. That precisely is what we are talking about, to give the bigger mental picture. So certainly the parish development model is not just about the parish revolving fund, the 100 million shillings, because in the introduction I had, and perhaps many Ugandans out there, that it is simply about the 100 million and what you call dishing out and some of it is a broader aspect, as you highlighted earlier on.
I didn't mention anything like dishing out.
No, I mean, at times you can insinuate. Yeah. So it is much broader, as you highlighted. Can we see improved delivery of education services at the parish? If the government policy is that every parish in Uganda, each of the 10,594 parishes in Uganda should have at least one government-aided primary school under the parish development model, we want to see that delivered. Because you can, while the bigger picture is on increasing production and productivity, but you can earn money and it simply goes through your hands because you have to look for a service further away. You have to take a child further away in another district, in another town far away, because you are looking for better education services, maybe in a boarding school or something. And so the comprehensive approach to socio-economic transformation is what we are talking about under PDM. But in terms of, even if you wanted to go to specifics, at household, we want to see food security. Can homesteads be assured of food, either grown by themselves or even bought from wherever it can be bought, because you have financial capacity to. Then job creation, as you highlighted. I'll just give an example. If you have somebody who has hitherto has had 3 acres of land unattended to because of financial limitation, this time this person says, I want to grow coffee. He or she may not do that alone, may need to employ other 2-3 people to support him or that household to be able to deliver on that dream or that investment in coffee. So that's already job creation. And that's at the very, very primary level. But as you go along the way, when the person requires harvesting, when this coffee has to be transported to the nearest milling machine. When this coffee has to be eventually transported, say for export or for processing, all of that is job creation along the way, created by just this one person who has invested in coffee. So the other one then is wealth creation, and that speaks for itself. Somebody gets an income you have produced, therefore when you sell you get an income. When you sell your labor as a border transporter, you get an income. And then the other one, like we talked about, is service delivery. So those are key components that until yesterday, most of those were stopped under Uganda's decentralization framework. Most of those were stopping at sub-county. Can we see this? The president has committed that this should go further down, up to people's parishes, and as you said, the parish being the last kind of planning unit. It is where you have the first civil servant in Uganda called the parish chief. So then, since independence, it is the first time under parish development model that we have seen full capacity of the institution of the parish chief. Until then, it was about 48% across the country, and 4 years.
Well, those were
now
around,
it is about 97%.
Those were around during the UPC days will actually tell you the parish chief was effective even then with a system of what they used to call nyumba kumi. And there were things being done at the local level than we are seeing now, even as we have decentralization in so many aspects. But one key issue, parish development model, the understanding of very many people, it's about wealth creation.
Yes.
And then there's so many things there, things that are supposed to be handled by the education sector, by the health sector. This jumbling up of so many things in one particular aspect, doesn't that cause a lot of confusion? Isn't this what is causing the problem, even in terms of implementation? Because as you'll hear later on, there are people actually saying there's a lot of confusion.
It is rather the coherence of those that we are talking about under PDM as opposed to the confusion. We are emphasizing the coherence. That until yesterday, for instance, you'd have a government project taking place in a given parish or sub-county without the knowledge by another ministry. And under PDM, we are saying, can we have structures that are gatekeepers, a parish development committee, which is basically LC2 system, and as representatives of the people, can we know who is coming into our parish, and can we synchronize?
Right.
But instead of you having the same borehole in the other village because you have mapped from Kampala as an example, come have a discussion with us, and when someone is coming next time, we can say, let's please invest in the other area.
All right, let's now hear from Elder John Eresu, veteran politician and former MP. What's your perspective about this? Is the parish development model being felt in Teso, where you come from?
Good evening, fellow panelists and listeners. I hope I'm clear. Am I?
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear, Honorable Eresu. Go right ahead with your submission.
Thank you very much. I would like, first of all, to thank Kapete for his presentation in the introduction. But I also want to say this, that the parish development model is one of those attempts to monetize and transform the peasantry. But it is not the first effort governments of Uganda have tried. In 1964-65, in the need to increase production of cattle, I come from the sowing area. The government of that time gave money through cooperative societies to farmers in the hope of increasing production. And the result for that year was a disaster. Because when people received the money, they had their own priorities. Just in the same way, parish development model disbursements are facing problems. In that, when the money came out, there is what you call personal priorities of the recipient of that fund. And then that money is used elsewhere than where it's supposed to be. Because each of us have got what we call the expenditure, priorities of what we use the money for. That is the first challenge that government had in 1965 which the parish development model is having today. So when I'm asked whether the parish development model has really succeeded, that is the answer I'm giving now. But the question is, why has it been the case? It has been the case because of three reasons. One, the parish development model, like any other government institution, lacks what you call a thorough objective and directions to achieve the objectives that they think they should have. For example, the parish development model, if you look at it, there are sets of so many pillars they should achieve that 100 million shillings, whatever the amount, is to achieve so many pillars, and you cannot achieve an economic objective when you have so many other objectives on a particular program. You achieve them at a time. Number two, the parish development model does not have specific supervisory body with a technical content, which should ensure that the aims that we want to achieve can be achieved. The parish development model was put on local government, and I can tell the reason why. The reason is because they have personnel at the local level, so they thought it would be convenient to use them. But this personnel of local government do not have the technical know-how of how to manage a project or manage that program. Therefore, they lack the ability to supervise the program as before. So the way I see it, these are the first problems that the parish development has got. However, even before that, there are other problems the parish development got from India. The first one was that the agencies that were supposed to disburse the funding, which are banks, the appointed banks, the beneficiary communities or villages or groups, whatever they were called, were supposed to have a bank account, and in so doing, they have to deposit some money into the bank to open the account. Now, when it came to receiving the money, the technical requirements to get them access their funding militated against the immediate success to remove the money so that they would invest it. Moreover, when most of this money was anticipated to be taken to the sector, now the condition of agriculture was not taken into account. For example, the weather, so that at the end of the day, when this money was received and the weather was not conducive, money being on the world, and 100 million shillings being something someone had never handled before, it was a total excitement, and the money was abused. Those are the processes I can say from now have been the militating factor which actually made the implementation of the parish development model very challenging. Hello?
Well, thank you very much there for your interventions, Honorable Eresu. Would you like to respond to some of the issues that he puts across, Mr. Kapoipwe?
It is, thank you, Honorable Eresu. It is my senior, Honorable Eresu. It is not to respond. It is to perhaps share information as we have it. And I would say that like many development interventions, the PDM, it's not that PDM has not had challenges. It is to say that even if we are to talk about the money where he seemed to put a lot of his energy, I'll share that against our target of 3.5 million households to work with and support them, that they have an investment, a family investment, and be able to nurture that. We nurture it with them and they get an income at the end of the day. Since we started even to work with the parish revolving fund, or the famous 100 million shillings, at about a year now. We have seen that out of 3.5 million households, we have reached over 1,164,000 households in about a year. And we have been able to see that over 162,000 families or households have invested in coffee, and we've been on ground and checked on this coffee through the government infrastructure, the government machinery. We've been able to see over 84,000 people in the country invest in dairy so far, improving the livestock, and we've seen close to 140,000 families invest in piggery. We have seen close to 140,000 households invest in poultry across the rural, the urban and peri-urban areas. So it is not that there are no challenges. It is to say there has been relative success this far and to that extent. We are not yet talking about impact, because the impact would be the so what. If people have invested and now they have, say, 1,000 chicken, then what? The poultry, yes, we've been able to sell eggs. The so what questions will come along the way. But the initial indicative direction of where we are heading so far is showing a green light. I'll tell you that if you looked at the end of the districts in Uganda, the investment in food production related areas by homesteads is increasing. In fact, we are getting more concerned now about the production and the market thereof that should offtake a number of these things that are quickly coming up. I mean, if you're talking about beans, some of them are quick maturing crops, and we need to, and the discussions now are on how do we offtake this production that is already showing the way. So it is not to say that there are no challenges. It is to say that while yesterday there were a handful of banks, physical banks in Mbale area, in Mbarara area to serve the Buhweju areas, which are a bit rural and further away and mountainous, that now through digitalization, you are able to serve people within their sub-counties, within their parishes, without having to first invest in transport, invest in all this and time to be able to come to Mbarara town, to come from Bulamburi, that you are going to look for money, like where we had started from that time when we opened a bank physical bank accounts that Honorable was talking about. So it is to say there is steady progress, challenges notwithstanding. And also remembering that we are investing in a phased approach. With this kind of big programming, you are not going to have everything rolled out at once. So in the case of the Parish Revolving Fund, we see that some people, yes, could have drank part of the money or something, but a larger section of people directly are getting something. We've seen people move now beyond small towns of yesterday, whether in Urungo Corner or in Katakwi or Maware in the case of the rural areas, or Ruerere in the case of Rukunjiri areas, to go deeper as owners, as investors, local investors, for seedlings, because they know somebody in my neighborhood will come and pick this. We've seen people begin to have hatcheries on their own, and because they know somebody in the neighborhood is going to come and buy these chicks. Those are hitherto new investment areas that we had not seen before. So in spite of challenges, we see there is some impressive work happening. All right,
Spectrum on Radio 1 FM 90, we need to go for a break. But when we return, we'll try to go pillar by pillar to see whether there's actually progress being done, whether some issues are actually being addressed. We talk about production. Are we seeing increased production? There's always been a challenge of storage. Are we seeing storage facilities? There's issue of processing and marketing, value addition, and finding markets for the farmers. Some situations where farmers are always struggling, and also we are still having a problem with the issue of value addition, where government is not putting adequate resources in the item known as agro-industrialization. Stay tuned to Radio 1 FM 90. When we return, I'll continue speaking to Mr. Kapwepwe and the Honorable Eresu, who is joining us on the line as we continue looking at the performance of the parish development model. Stay tuned to Radio 1 FM 90. We'll continue after this break. Well, thank you so much for staying with us on Spectrum, live on Radio 1 FM 90. Our topic of discussion rotates around the performance of the parish development model. I'm speaking to two gentlemen. That is Honorable Eresu John, who is joining us on the line. He's a former MP, veteran politician, and an economist as that. Also in studio, we have Mr. Kapwepwe, who comes from the Parish Development Model Secretariat, where he is a technical advisor. That is Julius Kapwepwe. Now, Julius, let's try to break down some of these issues. Well, this is the second year running. Let's look at Pillar 1, which is very important because it's the starting point. It's the engine. We must have more production, storage facilities to help deal with the challenges of post-harvest handling, but also there's the angle of marketing, which is very important because if these farmers don't find a market for the produce, they will likely not be enthusiastic about growing the same the following season. So on this first pillar, how are we doing? Are we seeing production shooting up? Are we seeing storage? Are we seeing processing? What are we seeing there? In Pillar 1, agricultural value chain development, which has those sub-components you've highlighted, is actually where you have the engine of PDM. It is mainly agricultural inclined, and against the facts of underproduction that you have grappled with. Uganda, you import one-day-old chicks from Europe. You import mangoes from your neighbors, including Kenya. You import gonja from DRC. We've seen that people, because of government education and what the president has always emphasized, the chibaro, production of being profit-oriented, it means that how much am I putting into this particular enterprise and how much will I be able to get out, at least by beginning with the paperwork. And government has invested heavily in producing even hard copies of estimates of costs of what it takes to do piggery, of what it takes to do coffee, about 80 commodities broadly guided by Ministry of Agriculture as the technical arm of government on agriculture. And we've seen an increased uptake based on Chibaro. And that already is translating into production. And generally that is beginning to happen across the country, beginning with food security. We've seen homes that until yes, because we've done assessments, regular assessments, to check with a particular home which we started with, how are we doing now? In over 102 local governments so far that we've systematically gone through and checked, you see a family that didn't have food yesterday is beginning to. A family that did not have a good banana plantation because they had no capacity to invest in manure. And all this is because of PDM?
It is a contribution, remembering that government interventions had brought this subsisting situation up to 61%. So PDM is simply building on other government efforts. It is not working. It is not in the field alone. It is not playing alone. It is building on efforts of other people. It is building on hitherto efforts of Operation Wealth Creation. It is building on other development interventions that government had done. So we see increased production. If you looked at, we've gone to a level in terms of, for instance, and you can check around. You are a journalist, you can check around that you will see increased demand now for cow dung, for instance, because people have money in the communities and want to improve their plantations and their other gardens. You'll see an increased demand for ground nut shells, precisely for fertilizers. For that is beginning to happen, and it is a change we are seeing. In terms of, for instance, the necessary processing and value addition efforts, we've done the mapping of the country led by, that was spearheaded by Ministry of Trade and also Operation Wealth Creation, and where we have established over 4,200 agricultural processing facilities. Some of them from earlier government investments. I'll just give an example. You have SENUSAF, which was Northern Uganda Social Action Fund, in a number of local governments, but some of the machinery either for and storage facilities built, but because the project ended, then you find that they have been lying in limbo. If His Excellency the President, for instance, has given a tractor to a certain group of the youth in a given part of the country, but because of limited management, it has no tire, or because of financial capacities. Those have been put into the realm of PDM so that they are linked to producer groups. If you looked at what a program like Community Agricultural Investment Program had hitherto invested in coffee machines, dairy plants or milk coolers across the country. We've opened up Tisai, for instance, in Kumi, which was a no-go area, but government had earlier invested, but issues of electricity, you find that that is the only component you need to do, and you can have producer groups under PDM linked to that kind of facility. That is beginning to happen as part of value addition, as part of increasing shelf life of our own produce as a country, that we can get better money.
All right, let's hear from Honorable Eresu on that first pillar. We're seeing production, storage, processing, and marketing. How are we doing? Are you feeling the change that Mr. Kapwepo is talking about?
Mr. Kapwepo has pointed matters, but when you look at it, in the first pillar, it mainly could be successful where there is a dairy production. It may be productive in the areas of other agricultural activities. But in my area, where generally it is not about dairy, and people talk of agriculture in terms of cultivation, production has been very hit by weather. Production has been very much hit by lack of inputs. Production has been very much hit by also the technical knowledge that would be used or needed in order to produce those particular crops. So, at the end of the day, the first pillar is not being achieved. So what am I saying is, the parish development model did not take into account the technical necessity and the variations in the conditions of production and type of products to be produced in different parts of the country. In other words, if PDM was going to be successful throughout the country, it should have come up with different pilot projects in different parts of the country to test what would be produced in different places. Now that production would have been would have been continued, so that the challenges that there in are contained, militating on the first pillar could be mitigated. But here was a program which was implemented without having what you would call a test or a pilot, so that people would know the shortcomings that would exist from which differ from one place to the other. And that has very much affected even the first pillar in those areas where I come from. So I think the success of the PDM will only be relative, and will only depend on maybe the dairy producers, but those in the agricultural areas which must depend entirely on rain and the rest of it, and since weather is an exogenous factor, it has been very much challenging. And to the extent that there is nothing to stop, because sometimes there are crop failures in the end. So, at the end of the day, let me say one thing. Who is the beneficiary of PDM? The beneficiaries of PDM, in my opinion, and maybe one beneficiary at that, I think the losers are the farmers in those areas like where I come from. But everybody else benefited, because when the money, for example, was put in the bank, or whoever was the disbursing agency, what happened was very simple. They lent this money to other sectors of the economy, like the manufacturing class, the commercial class. At the end of the day, those sectors improved in their output, and therefore government to recover that money. And government therefore would not lose. For example, assuming 1.8 trillion was disbursed in a financial year, that would mean VAT alone, government would earn something close to about 207 million shillings in a financial year through VAT payment. In other words, it doesn't lose even if it lends money because it gets money out for PDM. It will recover it through taxation because the taxes will definitely be paid since money is used by good things in the economy after all. But the final loser, like from where I come, is the farmer who might have got this money and invested, and there is a crop failure. The other person who also lose, probably along the way, are the same farmers who deposited money in the bank in the name of opening accounts, and in the end, when they invest, this thing collapses altogether. The weakness I see with the PDM, which should have been taken very seriously, was that it should have been piloted, taking into account the different scenarios and different climatic conditions and the different possibilities of crop combination and the crops that would be crops and all other activities, which would be suitable for the different areas, so that by the time the money is disbursed, by the time the investments are undertaken, there are checkpoints to know what the challenges will be. Unfortunately, this was not done. And that's why some places are failure.
All right, back here in studio, Mr. Kapwepwe, we have seen issues around mindset change. People considering this money that is being given to them as a reward from the government. Some people actually say Museveni at what they sent it. President Yoweri Museveni is thanking us for voting him into power. But also we are seeing aspects of corruption. We have heard about people being told to pay money so that they can be given money or so that they can be registered in a particular circle. And so many people have been complaining about that. Unfortunately, it even includes the duty bearers. People are supposed to guard against that. How are you dealing with these issues? Mindset change? People don't understanding the program. This is the second year running. But if you moved around, some people do not understand what the parish development model is all about.
Yeah, some people don't, but others do. But just to build on quickly on what Honorable Iresu has raised, I am not sure where he comes from, but I remember
he comes from Kaberamaido.
I remember him in the other parliament, and therefore assuming that he still comes from Kaberamaido. Kaberamaido, for instance, is one of the local governments that are well performing across all the 29 parishes that they have. If I had the time, I'd read all the names, and for purposes of evidence, for purposes of saying, let's go and check, because you have said so and so. We've been to Kaberamaido and we have seen lots of successes and some levels of challenges in some of the cases. So I don't want to take it just at face value unless you give me evidence. Honorable Iresu, and together we work on averting these challenges. The picture we have is that it is positive instead of challenges. We're also working in the case of Teso, for instance, with Serere Agricultural Research Center, that we contextualize and we are able to have locally available technical support from agricultural institutions of such a nature that we are able to deal with real issues of the regions. Nabuin, in the case of the Karamoja sub-region, for instance, we see a bigger picture different from, a different picture perhaps from what he sees. The piloting, we have not had challenges because there was no piloting, not at all. The issues, for instance, of extortion that you've raised, Ndugu Kenneth, is not because there was no piloting. It is because of some levels of dishonesty of our people. I'll take an example of some of the government officials who have been involved in some of the cases. You remember when we started, we tried to get money to the parishes through the district accounting mechanisms, and we got part of the money got injured. Good enough, it was all recovered 100%. But you know what we did? There was no accounting officer who went away with that money for those that had dished in their hands. You remember very well the media, you brought out that ably. the CDOs and some of the parish chiefs have been punished in some of the cases. So whether in Tungamo, whether in Komansimbi, and a number of other areas across the country. So the extortion, even so, is happening in some of the cases. Until yesterday, when the PDM circle, when the circles at the parish level were established, there was a thinking that of voluntarism, and which was not the case. So the circle leaders, for instance, at that level, started to charge the applicants for the parish revolving fund some money. In some of the cases, beyond, say, what is required to photocopy, beyond the 2,000 or 5,000 shillings to even 50,000. Remembering that earlier on we had given, government had given the circle leaders powers to decide, for instance, on appraise somebody's investment and see, is it worth 800 that the person is asking for? And then there was abuse of that window. If you want 800,000, we shall give you 500 unless you give us 100 as a kickback. So His Excellency the President Museveni guided that it shall be 1 million. So government systems work on empowering people and enabling them to handle 1 million shillings. And that's precisely what government machinery has done. The agriculture extension officers have taken people through the drills of what it takes to manage the 1 million shillings. Yes, the extensions, but increasingly these are waning away. Government also gave money to each of the 10,594 circles across the country, 500,000 shillings to be able to run the operation. So these distortions will increasingly reduce, and kindly keep reporting them to the Gomborora ISOs, to the sub-county chief, to the office of the RDC, so that you and I, we can be able to iron them out and let our people take their 1 million shillings freely and invest it in the areas as we have been guided.
Honorable Ereso, I'll be coming to you on to give us your view on that issue of mindset change, but also the corruption that is being reported. But let's first get these comments that are coming in from the listeners. Benon Fred Twinamasco. People who seemingly could be able to secure capital equivalent to that provided under PDM don't boast of the success being fronted on camera. Some seems not to add up. Well, it seems to say that certain things that are being showed do not actually add up when it comes to parish development. But we have Ariko here. We can't continue singing about value addition when the so-called advisors bring PDM instead of thinking about things like dryers and good storage facilities. PDM is dead alive because you gave people money, yet school fees is being demanded. So people are diverting money to school fees instead of PDM. We have another comment here. Good evening, Kenneth. The government has done it well in towns with PDM, but there are no follow-up in villages where youth are struggling to get jobs, yet there are few people are taking the money. That's Ephraim listening in from Kamoli. Very few people in villages. The uptake of PDM money in villages is very low, and yet there are so many youth who do not have jobs. Then we have a comment. It's a resemblance of primary debates. Father is better than mother. The MP's insistence is just a convincing factor. Does it mean when you are discussing Mijingo Islands, then the whole parliament has no base itself? All right, I think this is a comment that is not linked to parish development model. It should be something else.
No, he has a point.
Well, maybe he has a point there.
He has a point.
You will pick it and we see.
Yeah.
And then we have another comment coming in here from David, who says NUSAF has been a complete failure since NUSAF. Secondly, the MP should be told that the figures can be manipulated to tell lies, especially UBOS figures. I implore the MP to read a book titled When Numbers Are Used to Tell Lies. I think this comment is directed to you, Mr. Kapwepe, but this person is assuming that you are an MP. Numbers don't lie, and it seems your numbers somehow are lying. Let's begin with Honorable Eresu very quickly. Your responses to some of these issues, but also comment on the other issue very quickly in a few minutes, Honorable Eresu.
For me, I would think if PDM was to be successful, two things should have been taken into account. One, government is the right person to supervise investment of economic needs directly. It's not their responsibility. And the money which comes from the associated fund is for public administration. But the government will use some money from public administrators, which is from the consulting fund, as a one hope to support economic activity in the community. What do I mean? An institution, a specific institution that was created to which fund channel, and then a mechanism and modality that we put in place for making this money bust, so that this institution will have responsibility to monitor and make sure that the input output of this money creates price. Because a lot of PDM money has been lost. A lot of these programs and objectives are used because of lack of specific institutions that should be able to handle the affairs of people. If, for example, government has done a bank to which money has been channeled, the bank has qualities. So it has created a bank, not just an ordinary bank, created a bank to which 1.8 trillion or whatever put in, from which different committees could go directly at a given time. I'm sure people have been monitored very successfully, and this wastage would have been minimized. And maybe proper production and good output would have been realized out of this program.
All right. Thank you very much, Honorable Resu. Thank you very much there, Honorable Resu. I'm sorry I have to cut you short. Time is not on our side. Mr. Kapwepwe, quick response to some of the comments that have been made by the listeners while we prepare to leave this studio.
I'll quickly say that numbers don't lie. On the contrary, ask the people of Asamok sub-county. In any of the parishes in Amuria, you'll get the figures. Ask anyone in Kameruka sub-county in Budaka, go to Leria Parish, and you'll have real case change stories of PDM investment and effort. And the bit of saying water is better than the Mijingo case, water is better than fire, the person is right. Numbers don't lie. We are talking with evidence. We are not talking by mere wishes because we are in Kampala. We are on ground. We know what is happening in Chitagwenda in the case of Rwenzori region, and figures are impressive. We know what is happening in Buhweju. Go to Nyachana, to any of the parishes, and then come back here and we can have a more detailed conversation rather than simply better water is better than fire. Thank you very much. But also that PDM is building into the broader GDP expansion of the country and job creation. It is not just limited to the parish, but links to our other strategic intentions to compete globally and be a middle income status country.
All right, Honorable Resu, your closing remarks as we come to the end of this show.
My closing remark is very simple. PDM is a very brilliant idea. And I want to thank those who have created this program, or those who conceived the program. It's a very brilliant idea to monetize the policy. But unfortunately, if it is successful, it will be at a very high cost. Because they are using a very weak and inappropriate of solving the problem. We think they should sit down and go back to the drawing board and redesign them in such a manner it is cost effective, so that at the end of the day, better results. The objective is good, but the implementation is bad. That is what I can say.
All right, thank you very much there for your closing remarks. Your closing remarks, Mr. Kapwepwe, as we come to the end of this show.
It is important that regardless of our political shades and all these differences, we understand the philosophy of parish development model and other government wealth creation funds so that we can partake of them and encourage our people to be participants rather than simply bringing out at times what is just our own imagination. Things are happening under the headship of His Excellency President Museveni, and we are on a course that is going to get this country to the next level of socio-economic transformation.
So as a secretariat, as you continue implementing the parish development model, what are some of the things that we are likely to see, the lessons that you have taken from the phase we have gone through now, and is there areas for improvement, things that you're reflecting on and saying this will have to change for this model to actually work out for this country?
We are doing digitalization, for instance, that you don't have to rely on manually delivering things. So traceability of people using their national IDs and digitalization, so that you move away, say, from the physical banks, but people can be served, just like you see mobile money as an example. Wherever you are, we are using a system called Wendy. You are able to serve your people better. And we are improving, government is improving investments in technology, in the internet. The investments are happening across the country. Things are going to get better. Number 2, markets. Domestic markets. We are already programming and getting better to have offtake mechanisms by our industrial parks that have been built, by big factories like the breweries, and that can use part of the investments and the agro inputs and have certification so that people can be sure about the inputs they are using. Link up with the narrow centers across the country, like Kachwekano in the case of Chijezi, and many others across the country, to be able to deliver high quality production and investments in fertilizers to improve production is happening.
All right, I must thank you, Mr. Julius Kapwepwe, Technical Advisor at the Parish Development Model Secretariat. Thank you for sparing time to speak to us. And thank you very much, the Honorable John Eresu, for staying on the line there and contributing to this discussion. But thank you very much, dear listener, for tuning in and also sharing your views on this particular topic. Tomorrow, 2 hours of analysis of the top events of the week in Spectrum Extra. So join me then. But up next, we have the news in English with Miss Josephine Dagano. Thereafter, we'll continue with the Soul Train with BB Jr.